Assalamu alaikum, dear friends and students. Today we will discuss the introduction, structure, and reactivity of carbonyl compounds. And these are the topics that we will cover in our today's lecture. So let us begin with the introduction. Carbonyl is a functional group having carbon-oxygen double bond. It is undoubtedly the most important class of organic compounds. Carbonyl is a backbone of more than 70% of total organic compounds. This is the structural formula of carbonyl. Here you could see this carbon is doubly bonded with the oxygen, and there are two groups attached around the carbonyl. So on the basis of attachment of these two groups around the carbonyl, we have these classes of carbonyl compounds. Here R and R prime are any side chain. For the first molecule, you could see if we have a side chain and hydrogen connected around the carbonyl, it is aldehyde. However, if we have the side chains on both sides around the carbonyl, and it is called ketone. And look how aldehyde and ketone are very similar to each other. The only difference is the presence of the hydrogen and the absence of the hydrogen around the carbonyl. However, if we have the other heteroatoms such as the hydroxy, it is called carboxylic acid if it is linked with the carbonyl. If we have the chlorine linked with the carbonyl, it is called the acid chloride. If we have the alkoxy group connected with the carbonyl, it is called the ester. And if we have this NH2 group connected with the carbonyl, it is called amide. These two carbonyl compound, acid anhydride and imide, basically they are formed uh, by the condensation of, and if two carboxylic acid molecules condense, it and they give the acid anhydride, and if two amides condense, they give imide. So in a broader way, we may classify the carbonyl compounds into two classes. One is called the aldehyde ketone, and the other class is called the carboxylic acid and its derivatives. Now let us discuss the structure. Carbonyl is flat with trigonal planar geometry. Both carbon and oxygen atoms are sp2 hybridized. This is the structure of carbonyl. Here you could see the carbon and oxygen being sp2 hybridized gives birth to the trigonal planar geometry, and with trigonal planar geometry they have almost 120-degree angle around this bond and this carbon and this pi bond and this carbonyl, and then for the for this side and between these two bonds. And now let us discuss what alpha phase and beta phase is. Since carbonyl is flat, it has two phases. One is called the alpha phase and the other is called the beta phase. Alpha phase is below the plane. Beta phase is above the plane. What does it mean? Let's take this case, and this is the carbonyl, and as we have discussed, this has the flat geometry, the planar geometry. So the above phase, this phase which is being shown, is called the beta phase, and the below phase, which is not being shown, is called the alpha phase. We have two more phases called re phase and the psi phase. Uh, if carbonyl is attached to two different groups, it gives birth to two different phases called the re phase and the psi phase. And what makes the phase to be re or psi? If the high to low priority around the central carbon of carbonyl is in clockwise direction, it is re, and this direction, if it is in anti-clockwise, it is called psi. So before considering the example, let us recall about the R and S configurations of the chiral center. If you recall, we know that for those chiral compound, we used to assign the priorities on the basis of high atomic number, and once we have assigned the all four priorities around the central chiral carbon, and then by as per convention we used to consider the least prioritized group behind the plane, and for the first top three prioritized group we used to consider if the direction of high to low priority groups are in the clockwise is in the clockwise, it used to be the R, and if it is in the anti-clockwise, if it used to be the S configuration. So same protocol is applied here. Basically the inspiration of R and S in the inspiration of Re and Psi is taken from the R and S. Here the difference between the R and Re is that R is found for the chiral center and Re is found for the carbonyl carbon face. And the rest protocol is same uh, by assigning the priority. That we take this particular case. This is the carbonyl with two different groups. One is the methyl and one is the hydrogen. And obviously one group will always be the oxygen of carbonyl. So we have three groups, and if we assign the priority, we know that oxygen has the highest atomic number in this case. So it is the first prioritized group, followed by the carbon, and then the third priority is given to the hydrogen. So from first to second priority and second to third, and then third to first, we have the anti-clockwise direction. So what phase should it be? The psi phase. So this phase which is shown here is the psi phase. What if we reverse the phase? That is, if we look behind the plane, then the first priority and the second priority and the third priority, it will be looked like in a clockwise manner. So it will be a rephase. So remember, rephase and psi phase, and basically these phases are the absolute phases. It means once we have decided which phase is psi and which phase is re, they will always remain psi and re, being absolute in nature. However, for the alpha phase and beta phase, they are the relative phases. If we flip the molecule, the beta phases turns into the alpha phase or vice versa. Now let us consider the reactivity of the carbonyl. And as we know that carbonyl is the bond between the carbon and oxygen has high electronegativity in comparison with the carbon. So the electron density will be pulled towards the oxygen as compared to carbon. So there will be partial negative charge on the oxygen and partial positive charge on the carbon. So because of this polarity developed in this bond, we may have two resonating forms. If the pi bond is broken and the negative charge is resided on this carbon, so this carbon will, on this oxygen, so this carbon will be electron deficient and this oxygen will become the electron rich. So these two resonating forms are for the carbonyl. And before proceeding, let us decide which resonating form here is more stable. Obviously the first one is more stable because of no charges being shown on the atom, and also one more reason about the octet that we will cover in coming slides. So this carbonyl is electrophilic from its carbon, as we have discussed, because this carbon is partial positive. So what does it mean? It means whenever a nucleophile comes to the carbonyl, it will attack to this carbon and not to this oxygen. And this carbonyl is nucleophilic from its oxygen, being electronegative in nature. So whenever the electrophile comes in the vicinity of the carbonyl, it will be attacked by this carbonyl oxygen. So now let us discuss the both cases in detail. First, the nucleophilic attack. With the nucleophilic attack on carbonyl, it means the carbonyl is serving as the electrophile. So we may say whether the nucleophilic attack of carbonyl or carbonyl as electrophile, and the both statements are same. So let us assume this is a carbonyl general structure. We have the partial positive charge on the carbon and the partial negative charge on the oxygen, and there is a nucleophile, a general nucleophile. So when a nucleophile comes in the vicinity of the carbonyl, it must attack this carbonyl carbon, and then this pi bond will be broken to afford this oxyanion. And here, as we have discussed, the carbonyl's geometry to be planar. However, once the nucleophile has added to the carbonyl, and this geometry is no more planar. but this is tetrahedral because we have now four groups attached to the carbon. So what is the nature of the nucleophile that attacks to this carbonyl carbon? We have variety of nucleophiles that could attack the carbonyl carbon, such as the hydroxide, the alkoxide, the amide. Even water could attack, especially in the case of the form if we have the formaldehyde, that is hydrogens on both sides. Alcohol may also attack, and the ammonia. So basically, why are we discussing the nucleophiles that attack? In fact, we also want to discuss the nucleophiles that do not attack to the carbonyl carbon. And which are these nucleophiles? And these are the nucleophiles which do not prefer to attack to the carbonyl carbon, in which the alkene, although alkene is very much nucleophilic, but it is not compatible with the carbonyl carbon. The benzene is a poor nucleophile, as everybody knows. The halides, they do not prefer to attack the carbonyl carbon, the carboxylates, and the hydride. So let me discuss the reason why these nucleophiles do not attack the carbonyl. Uh, because if you consider the nucleophiles that attack the carbonyl, they have the negative charge on them, so they are hard in nature, and also they have the atoms that have the small atomic size. But if you compare the nucleophiles that do not attack, such as the benzene, which is a very weak nucleophile, or the halide, if you consider, and in the halide we have the iodide or bromide, which are bulkier in size, and for the carboxylate we have the anion, which is involved in resonance in conjugation, so not much nucleophilic. However, alkene is nucleophilic, but alkene is not compatible with the carbonyl carbon because of the reason that alkenes are the softer nucleophile, so they prefer to attack to the softer electrophilic site and not to the carbonyl site. We will discuss when we will be discussing the advanced reactions of the carbonyl, that is in the Michael addition, etc., where we will discuss the reaction and the such reactions. And one thing is very surprising about the H negative, the hydridine. Even this does not attack to the carbonyl. Now you must be thinking that we must have seen a lot of cases where the carbonyl group is reduced into the alcohol, and definitely it is because of the delivery of the hydride. But remember that hydride, which is used to reduce the carbonyl, is not the H negative, but that comes from the sodium borohydride source or the lithium aluminum hydride source. So we have the sigma electrons, and that is which attacks the carbonyl carbon, not the fully blown negative H negative ion, because hydride is it is a 1s it is a 1s2 orbital which cannot be which cannot attack the p orbital of this carbon. So this is the orbital, and so we have the orbital mismatching, and this hydride cannot attack the carbonyl carbon. Now let us discuss the electrophilic attack on the carbonyl, or you could say the carbonyl serving as nucleophile. If the electrophile comes in the vicinity of the carbonyl, now this time the oxygen of the carbonyl will attack the electrophile to have this oxygen electrophile bond, and there will be a positive charge developed on the oxygen because the lone pair have been involved in the bonding. So what sort of electrophiles could these be? Proton, which is the most famous and the most common electrophile for the carbonyl compound. We will also discuss their reactions further. And borane, which is a very good electrophile because of the empty orbital of the boron. So we have the complex of the carbonyl, oxygen, and the boron. If the borane comes in the vicinity of the carbonyl, and we have also the complex of aluminum chloride, aluminum with the carbonyl. If we treat the aluminum chloride, because aluminum also has the empty orbital. Protonation makes the carbonyl more electrophilic. This is very interesting fact. Uh, if we have the acid, so the first step will be the protonation of carbonyl. The lone pair of oxygen of carbonyl will anchor their electrons in the empty orbital of this H to have this protonated carbonyl group. And again, we have two resonating forms. The first resonating form is this, which is formed directly if we have the pi bonds attached to this proton. But the second resonating form may also be formed if we just pull the pi electron to the oxygen, to satisfy their valency, but in return we have the positive charge developed on carbon. So both are the resonating forms of carbon protonated carbonyl group, but the first one is more stable as compared to the second one, and the reason is that it has the complete octet, but in the second resonating form the carbon's octet is not complete, rather it has the sextet. So whenever you draw the protonated carbonyl, always prefer the first resonating form, not the second one. Well, this is the carbonyl carbon, which is electrophilic in nature, as we have discussed. But once it is protonated, this carbonyl carbon becomes more electrophilic. So, why do we protonate the carbonyl? The answer is to make the carbonyl carbon to be more electrophilic. Now, let us discuss the tetrahedral intermediate, which may be quenched or collapsed. We will discuss the term quenching and collapsing. First, we consider the nucleophilic attack, and then the nucleophile attacks the carbonyl carbon. This pi bond is broken, and we have the oxyanion here. This intermediate, which is shown here, is called the tetrahedral intermediate because of the tetrahedral geometry of around this carbon. Well, now we have two methods to perform this to make the reaction go. First is the collapsing of this pi electron to have this carbon oxygen double bond. In return, this X group will depart if it has the leaving tendency, and we will have the carbonyl group retained, reformed, and with the departure of the X. So this step is called the collapsing because the tetrahedral intermediate, which has been just formed, is collapsing in this step. However, we have one more method rather than collapsing of the tetrahedral intermediate. If this oxyanion attacks the electrophile and have this final product, in this case this oxyanion tetrahedral intermediate, rather than being collapsed, it's quenching. So what makes the tetrahedral intermediate to collapse or to quench? It depends on the nature of X, this one. If X has leaving tendency, such as the OR, if it is OR, alkoxy, as in the case of ester, or Cl, chloro, as in the case of acid chloride, or NH2, as in the case of amide, and also the acyl oxy, as in the case of acid anhydride, or the imide. So if X has the leaving tendency, the tetrahedral intermediate will prefer to collapse. So when we were discussing the two broader classes of carbonyl compounds, we mentioned that uh, one is the aldehyde and ketone, the other class is called the carboxylic acids and their derivatives. So for the second class, the carboxylic acids and their derivatives, then this collapsing is favorable. Warning: remember, when you show the attack of the nucleophile to the carbonyl carbon, and if you want to displace this R prime group, this cannot be done like shown, because it gives impression that you are having the SN2 substitution, that is the nucleophile is attacking and the leaving group is leaving the system. It's not possible in the same step, because this carbon which is being attacked is not sp3 but sp2 hybridized carbon, and it cannot afford the SN2 reaction, because we don't have the right path for the attacking of this nucleophile to this carbonyl carbon and to have the SN2 substitution. So the reaction must go via the tetrahedral intermediate, as we discussed. That is, the nucleophile will attack this carbonyl carbon, and first of all this pi bond will move towards the oxygen to have the oxyanion, a tetrahedral intermediate, and then this oxyanion will make the double bond between the oxygen and carbon with the departure of this R group, which is called the collapsing step. However, the formation and collapsing of tetrahedral intermediate may not be shown to save time by placing a double-headed curly arrow. To avoid showing the tetrahedral intermediate, we have one shortcut. If we put this red arrow, remember, putting red arrow is very necessary. If you do not put the red arrow, these blue arrows only if you show the blue arrows, this will be a wrong reaction. So this red arrow means we have basically saved two steps. One is the formation of the tetrahedral intermediate, and the other is the collapsing of the tetrahedral intermediate. So now you have two options to show the nucleophilic attack on the carbonyl carbon and making the group leave the system, either to show the tetrahedral intermediate in one step and then collapse it, or just put this red arrow, but never do like this. Now let us compare the relative reactivity between the aldehyde and ketone. As you know, aldehyde is more reactive than ketone, and there are two reasons for this. One is called the steric reason and the other is called the electronic reason. So let us discuss the steric reason first. Uh, we have the H is small in size as compared to the ketone. So when a nucleophile comes to attack the aldehyde, it is not sterically hindered site, but when the nucleophile attacks the ketone, we have the steric hindrance for the nucleophile and that larger group. So nucleophile finds difficulty in attacking the ketone, but it does not find difficulty in attacking the aldehyde, and hence aldehyde is more reactive in comparison with the ketone. Now let us discuss the electronic factors. As you know, alkyl groups are electron donating groups. So if we have two alkyl groups attached to the carbonyl, that is in the case of ketone, so both alkyl group will release the electron towards the carbonyl carbon, and thus making this carbon less electropositive. So nucleophile will find difficulty to attack this relatively lesser electrophile as compared to the better electrophile. So this positive inductive effect, which is called the electron releasing effect, is just because of one carbonyl carbon, one side chain, not because of the hydrogen. But in case of ketone, we have both R and R prime groups showing the positive inductive effect. So this will make the carbonyl carbon less electrophilic. Now let us discuss the relative reactivity among other carbonyl compounds. Here it's a ranking the acid chloride to be the most reactive, and then acid anhydride, and then ester, and then amide. So what makes the acid chloride to be the most stable, followed by the ester, followed by the anhydride, and then ester, and then amide? It depends on the leaving group ability. The chloride is the better leaving group, then carboxylate, then alkoxide, then amide. Remember, and this is most reactive because this is a good leaving group. This is second most reactive because this is also a good leaving group, and this is the least reactive because this is not a good leaving group. So what makes chloride to be the most to be the best leaving group and amide to be the worst leaving group among these four? So it depends on the pKa value of their conjugate acids. As you know, chloride is the conjugate base of HCl. So the conjugate acid of chloride is HCl, the conjugate acid of carboxylate is carboxylic acid, and conjugate acid of alkoxide is alcohol, and conjugate acid of amide is ammonia. So lesser the pKAH, better the leaving tendency. With the pKAH, it means the conjugate acid's pKa, the pKa value of their conjugate acid. So HCl has the lesser pKa because it is the most acidic, and ammonia has the least pKa because it's the least acidic. In fact, it is not acidic at all. Rather, we consider it to be basic. So that is why the chloride is the most leaving tendency, followed by the carboxylate, then alkoxide, and then amide. Remember, when carboxylic acid is there with the nucleophile, it is not serving, acting like the other members of the carboxylic acid derivative as we were discussing for the aldehyde, acid chloride, acid anhydride, amide or ester, and because nucleophile rather than attacking the carbonyl carbon, it prefers to attack this terminal hydrogen because this is the acidic hydrogen, and we have simple acid base reaction. This will become the carboxylate salt and this NuH will be formed, and this carbonyl carbon was not a good electrophile because of two oxygen which will pull electron density toward which will this oxygen's lone pair will uh, shift its electron density here, and we have the conjugation here. But once the carboxylate salt has been formed, the electricity and the electrophilicity further decreases, And the nucleophile, rather than serving as a nucleophile, it serves as a base when it reacts with the carboxylic acid. Now let's discuss the last topic of today's lecture, the Burgi-Dunitz trajectory, which is also called the Burgi-Dunitz angle. Basically, it's the direction from which the nucleophile approaches the carbonyl group. We have discussed how nucleophile attacks the carbonyl carbon, and we have the breakage of the pi bond to afford the tetrahedral intermediate. But now we will discuss from where the nucleophile comes to attack to the carbonyl carbon. It is not possible for nucleophile to come from any side to the carbonyl carbon, but it has some specific uh, route that it has to follow. But before discussing the Burgi-Dunitz trajectory, let us discuss two very basic ideas. Uh, One is called the pi sigma framework of the carbonyl. As you know, the carbon and oxygen both are sp2 hybridized, so it has three sp2 hybrid orbital each. The carbon and the oxygen, which is shown here, and the turquoise color for the carbon and the pink color for this oxygen. So these are the sp2 orbitals, and for the pi framework, one p orbital which is perpendicular to these hybrid orbitals is shown in the green. So this gives birth to the pi bond. And remember, we have the anti-bonding orbital pi star, which is perpendicular to the plane of the carbonyl. So when nucleophile attacks, it attacks to the anti-bonding orbital of the carbonyl pi star, the carbonyl pi bond, which is called the pi star. So this is how the nucleophile may have the maximum overlap if the nucleophile comes perpendicular to the carbonyl. This will give us the maximum overlap. This is a very good situation. But the problem is that in doing so, nucleophile will experiences pretty much repulsion from the pi electron density of the carbonyl. So this makes nucleophile to attack to slightly in an inclined manner, to avoid the repulsion of these pi electrons. So this is basically, this is a compromise between the two opposing phenomena. One phenomenon favors the nucleophile to attack perpendicular to the carbonyl because of the maximum overlapping. The other phenomenon opposes this perpendicular attack because of the electronic repulsion. So rather than having the 90-degree angle or the 180-degree, it is somewhere in between, which is experimentally calculated to be the 107 degree, which is called the Burgi-Dunitz angle. So the nucleophile attacks from this angle. You could see in this picture, when nucleophile attacks to the carbonyl bond, we have this angle which is slightly inclined towards this side, not to the oxygen, and the angle is 107. So as a result of this compromise, this nucleophile attacks at 107 degree, and this angle is called the Burgi-Dunitz trajectory or the Burgi-Dunitz angle. So that's all for the introduction, structure, and the reactivity of carbonyl compounds. In the next lectures, we will explore the chemistry of aldehydes and ketones, synthesis and their reactivities and their different chemical reactions. And then in further lecture, we will consider the chemistry of the carboxylic acids and their derivatives. And then we will advance ourselves by discussing the aldol reactions and Michael addition, then Robinson annihilations, etc., etc. So thank you.